Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
The Biden administration is deploying 1,500 U.S. troops to the southern border.
That's in addition to the 2,500 National Guard soldiers already deployed there. This is an effort, of course, to manage what's expected to be an onslaught of potentially tens of thousands attempting to cross the southern border into the U.S. as soon as Title 42 expires. Of course, that's the rule which allowed for the rapid removal of migrants encountered at the border due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic.
Fox's Kevin Corke reports the troops will be assigned to administrative functions to free up Customs and Border Patrol agents to do their jobs. State lawmakers in Florida have given final approval to a state immigration reform bill that will provide $12 million to relocate migrants brought to the state. Several of Jeffrey Epstein's victims are demanding the Justice Department conduct an investigation into what they say was the FBI's failure to investigate their repeated complaints that Epstein was involved in child sex trafficking. In a letter, a lawyer for the group calls it an abject failure to timely investigate, expose, and prosecute a decades-long criminal conspiracy. A Senate committee Tuesday held a hearing on Supreme Court ethics.
It's a hearing that Senate Judiciary Chairman Dick Durbin wanted Chief Justice John Roberts to attend, but the Chief Justice declined. Yet that's not stopping Democrats in their push for ethics reform at the High Court.
Highest court in the land should not have the lowest ethical standards.
Much of the debate centered around whether or not Congress actually has the authority to impose that set of rules on the court. But Republicans argue Democrats are just playing politics because they don't like the decisions coming from the nation's high court. And in a statement released last week, all of the justices did agree to their existing code of conduct. And there's also a bipartisan bill recently offered by Maine Senator Angus King and Alaska Republican Lisa Murkowski that would require the court to establish its own conduct code.
Fox's Marianne Rafferty. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Say goodbye to high-power bills with Budweiser. Purchase 12 packs of Bud Family and Bud Light Seltzer and scan the QR bucks inside for your chance to win a home solar package with install from Generation Renewable, a Choice Quad Play bundle from GTA, and other solar gear. Plus, all the codes you scan can earn you points that you can redeem for great Budweiser gear. Just check the Current Guam app to schedule your prize pickup. Must be 21 to enter. See currentguam.com for details. Budweiser reminds you to enjoy responsibly.
Express yourself into the groove. The Guam Chamber of Commerce celebrates its 99th anniversary at the Dusatani Resort on May 6th with the theme of Madonna's Vogue. The Chamber's membership includes many corporations, large and small, entrepreneurs, and nonprofit organizations. Members play a key part in making Guam a star-bright place to live, work, and play. Let's congratulate the Guam Chamber of Commerce and its members on celebrating its 99th anniversary.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Oh, well, regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, our right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So here we go, sports fans, another exciting day here on Tall Tales. Lots of things to talk about, lots of things to think about. One of the things that we don't have to think about today is Zemi Ikotni, which is apparently an extinct animal. It's on the endangered species list. The Post quit writing editorials about 5 months ago, the Daily News last week. I haven't seen an editorial now for several days. So we go from the Second Amendment right straight to the card because there are no more editorials. So let's take a peek at the card and see what we got for today. Of course, we start out with systemic racism. And then the first item, and then Public Law 36-34, of course. And then sanity versus Democrats. And it looks like, right now, it looks like the Democrats are winning because sanity keeps becoming less and less apparent in our society as we go along.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Florida.
That's about the only place where sanity does survive, yeah. And then we've got more on the governor versus Blas. And we're picking up on Fisher and Calamity Jane versus babies, and I'm adding Tim and Tall Tales to that mix today. And then the Guam Visitors Bureau versus Carl and Joe Mack, formerly known as Joe McDonald. His name on Tall Tales is going to be Joe Mack.
Had a firm.
From now on. Starting out, taking a peek at I got, as you were on the Public Law 36-34, once again, I'm really stuck on this meeting that's supposed to occur tomorrow. The Board of Commissioners, Restoration Development Authority, has a Board of Commissioners. And they're meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And item 4C is the presentation of the resolution to appoint Adrian P. Cruz executive director. And I haven't seen anything at all in the news about whatever happened to Lassia Casil.
Oh, yeah. Isn't there an Adrian Cruz at the Department of Agriculture?
Well, there was. He was a deputy director. He was in charge. He was at the Department of Agriculture, and he was in charge of the manure section at the Cannabis Control Board. He was on the Cannabis Control Board, and he made long and impassioned speeches about synthetic fertilizer versus natural fertilizer, which, according to Adrian, is much better than synthetic fertilizer. Manure is much better. So, as much as I like to discuss, debate, argue, I'm going to just default to Adrian Cruz's expertise. I'm not going to argue with him about manure. I'll just let him win that one hands down. And it looks like I got yesterday's Facebook on my... Boy, Facebook makes it so hard, don't they? Let me just take a minute here and see if I can pick it up. I really need those comments from our international radio Facebook audience to help me through the show.
They're waiting for you.
Yeah. I guess we're up, aren't we, Jose? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Here I am. Big as life, twice as ugly. Yeah, so that's Adrian Cruz. Now, you know that Roy Gamboa, formerly of the Lieutenant Governor's Office, who broke the Mini Hatch Act by running for office as a classified employee, found guilty by the Civil Service Commission. But by the time the Civil Service Commission actually got to him, he had resigned. And the Civil Service Commission said, well, there's nothing we can do now. But, of course, he's back in government service. You'd think that they could now hand down their penalty for his violation of the Mini Hatch Act. But, of course, he might not have known he was violating the act, so it's okay.
Those of you from the 70s and 80s remember this character from Mad Magazine, Alfred E. Newman.
Oh, yeah.
That's the face of the Civil Service Commission.
Yeah.
What? Me worry?
Yeah, Alfred E. Newman. What? Me worry? Yeah. I think that was my introduction to satire, Jose.
Mad Magazine?
Yeah, yeah.
Explains a lot.
It does. Okay, first item on the card, sanity versus Democrats. And I've got a piece here that, let's see, where did it run? I can't tell you. I'll get back to it later on. Straight white male Republican identifies as lesbian of color. His family receives violent threats. In America, a place of liberty and identity, is America a place of liberty and identity for all? An Indian politician appears to be putting equality to the test. An Indiana politician. One of that exotic place that I visited, Jose. You know, India, Indonesia, Indiana, man. One is more exotic than the other. Republican Delaware County Councilman Ryan Webb recently delivered life-defining news on Facebook. The erstwhile straight white male wrote thusly, quote, "After much consideration, I have decided to come out and finally feel comfortable announcing my true, authentic self. It is with great relief that I announce to everyone that I identify as a woman." And then he followed that up with, "and not just a woman, but as a woman of color as well." Now we're told that this is a straight white male Republican, and he has now come out as a lesbian of color. I'm excited to bring some diversity to the county council. This is Delaware County, Indiana. Today we didn't have any females of color or LGBTQIAPC++ on the council. I'm glad that we do. I'm glad that we now do. To avoid confusion, everyone can continue to address me as Ryan or Councilman Webb. I will also retain my preferred pronouns of he and him. However, this will in no way diminish my true identity as a woman of color. I am excited to be a vocal partner of the LGBTQIAPC++ movement. Who knows just how far we can take things? But I'm just glad that this is now possible, so anyone can change anything or anyone that they want. I am honored to be the one who shattered that glass ceiling. And then he's got the hashtag girl power. The post featured a rainbow, quote, BU image, and was punctuated by the pride flag and a flex muscle emoji. Ryan also included a winking smiley face, which led 67-year-old Charlize Jameson to suspect a ruse. Biological male Charlize decried such disrespect to the star. Quote, "In an effort to make fun of the transgender non-binary individuals, Ryan Webb came out on social media as a lesbian woman of color. Since his initial post, he has doubled down repeatedly on his status. He has the right, he has a history of making transphobic statements." Ooh. Isn't that a felony? Making
Making the statements?
Yeah.
Or being mad about it?
I think, well, probably both should be, yeah. Charlize, who sports a blouse and lipstick in a photo online, had a bit of back and forth with the newly announced non-white homosexual. Charlize, was this necessary? It's unbecoming of an elected official or a decent human being, for that matter. Then Ryan comes back and says, Charlize Jameson, do you think you have the only password to the forbidden world of coming out? When you decide to become a woman, did people tell you it was unbecoming? Sorry, pal, but you don't get to be the decipher of who is acceptable and who isn't. I was hoping that you and I could be friends, now that we're both ladies, and that that used to be men. I'll give you some more time. This is so right on. You know, it's okay to pretend unless you aren't pretending and you're being sarcastic. Then it's not okay. Other commentary were complimentary. Like, I love you, Congressman Webb, or bravo, bravo, or you go, girl. Identity is certainly the issue of the day, and about the look and look for the look of things. The sky's the limit. Ryan Webb attempted to participate in the modern world, but has his racial revision and was of the bridge too far, even though, as some have characterized, race is less rigid than sex. His proclamation prompted ardent and disapproval, and not just from the inside. He lamented about a lack of toleration. And here's some of the lack of toleration. Our family has been receiving violent threats today throughout the day from intolerant liberals who refuse to accept my decision to live my life how I choose.
He's using all the right language.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but a group called the Indiana Progressives have decided to organize a hate and harassment campaign against my family by publishing my address and encouraging people to unlawfully congregate at my home. The progressives. So when they see what someone is doing that they've been doing themselves, they dox the guy and then say, let's go stand around that guy's house. He's transphobic. So this is a classic example of systemic racism, Jose. It's not the behavior that counts. It's whether or not you're with the narrative. If you're with the narrative, you could do all of these things that would be prohibited otherwise. Going on, Ryan suspects a double standard. It is unfortunate that I cannot simply be given the same space and respect to explore my identity that so many of you targeted my demeanor for themselves. Not long ago, gender was merely a grammar term. Gradually, it found prominence in probably in the place of sex. Subsequently, we were informed that gender, unlike sex, denotes identity. Hence, someone could be male yet identify as a female. And now here we are. It's a new day in America, and it's sure to get even newer. But in Muncie, Indiana, the day may be a little bit less brand spanking for Ryan Webb than for others across the ideology aisle. So this is so right on. This straight white guy comes along and says, I'm a woman of color and I'm a lesbian. And the folks on the other side, the transgenders, just can't handle that. You know, you're making fun of us. Well, we're just doing what you're doing, guys. I mean, gals. I mean, she or her or who the hell ever you are. Here's the next article. This one is even worse, Jose. Trans woman not guilty of indecent exposure charges after using women's locker room, court rules. A biological male who identifies as a female was found not guilty of 3 counts of indecent exposure after using the women's locker room at a YMCA in Xenia, Ohio, WHIO reported. Now let's just stop right there. What does YMCA stand for? Young Men's Christian Association. That should kind of tip you off, right? Yeah, I suppose that they'll be the next one to catch some flack. It'll then become the YTCA, Young Transgenders Christian Association. But of course, they don't like Christians either, so Christians got to come out of there, right? Yeah, so this radio station in Xenia, Ohio reported this. Darren Glines, who goes by Rachel, but has not undergone transgender surgery, was charged with public indecency in December 2022 after 3 reports that Glines exposed his genitals on 3 separate occasions while using the women's facility between 2021 and 2022, one of which underage girls were present, according to the documents obtained by the Daily Caller News founder. Xenia Municipal Court Judge David McNamee ruled Friday evening that there were no facts to prove Glines had entered an area of the YMCA where Glines was not supposed to be, WHIO reported. Quote, it's unfortunate not only for her, but for the entire community that the filing of these charges ever occurred, Glines' attorney, Lauren Deaver, and Glines' attorneys, Lauren Deaver and Kearney Deaver, said, Lauren Deaver and Kearney Deaver, I wonder if they're wife and wife. They both seem to have the same names, right? Said in a statement obtained by WHIO on Monday, we are grateful that the rule of law and the truth prevailed so that Ms. Glines and the community can move on in peace. Jacqueline Brockman, Fairborn YMCA Executive Director, testified that Glines had permission from the YMCA. Permission from herself and other YMCA employees to use the facility, according to WHIO. The YMCA front desk reportedly told a woman who complained about seeing a naked male in the locker room that Glines was a woman and not to be disturbed. According to Xenia City Council President William Urschel. The YMCA of Greater Dayton is committed to adhering to Ohio and federal laws and anti-discrimination laws, which allow all members access to its facilities and programs. In addition, the Greater Dayton YMCA has a strong record of both promoting personal privacy and modesty within our facilities, which are both safe and accommodating while serving and including all members of the community equally. The organization told the DCNF, "We are committed to following the law in order to protect the right of all members and to protect their right to access YMCA facilities. Should Ohio's Attorney General provide clarification, the YMCA will always strive to be in full compliance with all state and federal laws while being still serving the rights and interests of all our members." It's just amazing. The guy is standing buck naked in the ladies' restroom.
Why do they even have separate gender restrooms then?
Standing buck naked there, a lady goes and complies, and the director of the YMCA says, "It's okay, he's a woman." And I'm afraid, Jose, we've reached a tipping point. You know, I've never lived at a place that had a YMCA, but there was one in Janesville and there was one in Lake Geneva, and I used to use the YMCA frequently, and I always had a lot of respect for them. Pretty good outfit, you know, inexpensive, accommodating, etc. But this kind of nonsense. Too much. Okay, next we go on to Governor versus Blas. And yesterday I read the governor's, let's take a short break here.
Join us on May 12th as we host our annual PBS Guam Pledge Drive. Tune in and show your support for quality, educational, and entertaining programming. Your contributions help us continue to bring you thought-provoking documentaries, captivating cultural programs, and engaging children's shows. So tune in to PBS Guam Friday, May 12th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. and pledge your support to help us keep Guam enriched, inspired, and entertained. Viva!
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, the governor sent out a press release, and I read the governor's press release yesterday, and of course the governor says all the right things. She gets in the magic words. It only takes her, it's the third paragraph, where she talks about the good, hardworking people at DOE. And of course, if you're the governor or a senator, if you ever mention government employees, you got to tell everybody that they're good employees, that they're hardworking, etc. You know, and that, of course, is the purpose of the press release, is virtue signaling. But she says the executive and judicial branch of the government of Guam have both been able to pay the new GPP rates to all employees for the pay period that ended on April 22. However, the Guam legislature mandated in Public Law 37-3 that the implementation of the act, including its appropriation of funds for the new GPP rates, could only become effective when plans to pay the annual salary increments, etc., had been submitted to the legislature. And the governor characterizes this as, despite this mandate for more bureaucracy, the Department of Administration is working diligently to submit the plans required, etc. So, you know, even though the law said you can't pay this until you submit the plans that were part of the Budget Act, part of the appropriation, the governor says, well, we paid everybody anyhow, notwithstanding Frank Bloss's bureaucracy. Such a bureaucrat, you know, enacting statutes. And then she says, but of course she's got to do the buzzwords. The hardworking people at DOE didn't get it because of Frank Bloss's bureaucracy. And then Frank Bloss comes back and responds, and the Daily News picks it up and kind of gives the governor more equal time. The headline is, Adelup, Bloss differ on who's to blame for delayed pay raises. The governor's office on Tuesday blamed Senator Frank Bloss Jr.'s amendment to the pay raise funding legislation for delay in the actual pay raise increases for mostly Guam Department of Education employees, calling it unnecessary bureaucratic red tape. Bloss said Adelup had weeks to submit what he deemed a simple report of plans that can be prepared in a day. And here's Bloss's zinger. Don't blame me for your ineptitude, Bloss said in response to Adelup's statement. And then the governor can't let it go. Senator Bloss is mistaken. The problem was, in fact, caused by his amendment. The executive and judicial branches are able to fund their judicial funding until the reports are submitted. The governor's director of communications, Crystal Paco San Augustine, said. So they had enough money to pay it without the appropriation. I wonder if the report was actually a condition precedent to paying the raises, then I'm looking for Doug Weiland, and I'm looking for B.J. Cruz on this, because it couldn't have been anything else.
What I don't understand is earlier she had sent a bill that she signed off on the DOE, but she had scratched out some parts she didn't like and said it's my obligation, or I have executive power to do line item vetoes. except for when it comes to a Senator Bloss amendment.
Yeah.
Then she can't.
Well, she said that she was using her severability.
Oh, that's right.
Severability. And, of course...
So what happened to it this time?
Of course, she does have a line item veto authority, but only for appropriations, not for text.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Bloss said you can't use this money or you can't do the raises until you submit these reports. She didn't submit the reports. They used money that had been appropriated for something else and paid everybody but DOE who didn't have enough money to do it. So they had to actually follow the law there. And they're saying, well, we're working on it and we'll have it done by the end of the month. So there's so much going on here. You know, there's the paying off the chief of staff, letting him resign, then rehiring him the next day and give him an $11,000 plus bonus. There's letting I don't know if it was let or requiring everybody else to resign and take their lump sum bonuses. That's corruption. Yeah, so where are you guys? BJ, Doug Moylan? This looks like ample material for you guys to work on.
And on the narrative also, can I just not pay anything after its deadline and blame it on the person who wrote that law or who put that policy into place? Is that our excuse now? Depends on who you blame. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's free. It's a free for all now, since you could even blame the Adeloop 6, since they were traitors.
That's right.
Yeah. So the governor says, despite this mandate for more bureaucracy, the Department of Administration is working diligently to pursue the plans required by Section 10, which will permit allotted funds to be transferred to GDOE so it can make the necessary payments, the governor's office said. There was no specific data as to when that would happen. So, Governor, you keep doing it. And and the human nature being what it was, or what it is, if you continue to do it and nobody gets called on it, you're going to continue to do it. Okay, from there I'm going to go back to something we spent a lot of time on, and we're going to have to spend a lot more time on, and that's Fisher's referendum. Technically, it's called a legislative submission. It really is a referendum. The draftsmanship was a little faulty there as far as I'm concerned, so I'm going to call it a referendum. And we start out here. Start out with Tim Rohr. And Tim Rohr says, I'm not pro-life, so F that. Somewhere soon, after Ray initiated his interview with Senator Tom Fisher, this past Monday on the Ray Gibson show, Fisher brought up Tim Rohr and Jungle Watch. Ray immediately chimed in saying that he knew well and that he knew Tim well and that he was, quote, pro-life and something like that. Thanks, Ray. Yeah, I am, but not really. And I want to qualify that. So thanks for the opportunity. I'm not, quote, pro-life. That's what Tim says. Anti-war, anti-death penalty, lib types are pro-life. Anti-war and anti-death penalty liberal types are pro-life. My position is that I just don't like bad guys, especially bad guys who hurt the innocent and helpless, and they puppies, meaning, yeah. Young among dogs. Pretty soon, underserved. I mean, child served. Helplessly old people. Polish dissidents, and Anne Frank. That's who he doesn't like to see people hurt. In fact, I hate that young Youngstead and Krabs, given live lively, are chopped up and cooked and churned, as you were burned to death on teppanyaki grills, while them gruel uselessly. So what Tim is saying, that he doesn't like to see people beating up on old people or on the young or on puppies or full-grown dogs or 3-year-old children or helpless old people or Polish dissidents or Anne Frank. In fact, he says, I hate that even Youngstead and, as you were, lobsters and crabs still young are chopped up and cooked and used to and burned to death on teppanyaki grills while their eats drool. Yeah.
Let me read it for you.
Huh? Yeah, good idea.
Back in the room. I know that you're having trouble with your printer the other day, Bob, so I'm going to finish reading my copy here.
Hey, good idea.
All right. So, where is it at here? So, Tim goes on to saying that my position is that I just don't like bad guys, especially bad guys who hurt the innocent and helpless, be they puppies, full-grown dogs, 3-year-old children, helpless old people, Polish dissidents, or Anne Frank. In fact, I hate that lobsters and crabs still living are chopped up and cooked and burned to death on teppanyaki grills while their eaters drool. F that. That's the letter F. And I hate that we are okay with children still living are chopped up and cooked, see abortion by saline, and under such a name as Senators Fisher and Barnes' Health Protection Act of 2023, an effing euphemism only approximated by the Nazis' employment of the final solution. Yes, F, final solution, that. Your friend, Tim.
Well, this is powerful, and this is classic Tim. And, of course, you have to pay attention. My font is a little messed up, but you did it well, Jose. And what Tim is saying is this. You know, bad guys chop up people. They chop up human beings. They chop up the unborn. And Tim doesn't go for it. He doesn't go for any of this kind of stuff. It's mean. It's coarse. It's crude. It's absolutely horrible. But, of course, some people will not deal with the truth. They deal with euphemisms. And what they're doing is they're just dealing with selfishness. And they are catered to selfishness, and they're just dead wrong. So, as always, I want to talk about Vanessa Williams. And here's Vanessa Williams. It is impossible to seek our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. It's classic, so it's as crazy as the guy, the buck naked guy in the men's room, and the director of YMCA said it's a woman.
What's crazier is the narrative has to be kept. But this time in abortion, the narrative is about killing a human being. And they can't get past their own narrative that they're willing to dispose of innocent lives just so that they can have their way, they can make a point, or they can feel triumphant. And that's the worst thing.
It really is bad. Yeah, it really is bad. And there's just no getting around it. You're talking about a helpless, innocent, defenseless human. And Tim is spot on. It's not some sort of gentle, undertaking. These babies are chopped up.
Well, you started to hear on this radio station, and I've been keeping to this philosophy or policy that I'm no longer going to call myself pro-life. I'm an anti-abortionist.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. And pro-choice doesn't label it all, because someone who sees a human baby that's not wanted has lots of choices to make. One of them cannot be death.
Absolutely.
And so we are anti-abortionists, pro-lifers. I believe everybody's a pro-lifer, or else they would have offed their own lives a long time ago. But this is why Tim says F this, because you're not using the correct language. You're going in front of people and telling them everything else except for what abortion really does.
You're exactly right. And then I've got the great pronouncements, and you're absolutely right, Tim. And then we've got Thomas Fisher, who says this: I don't have a uterus. Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of things, but he certainly doesn't have a uterus. It looks like I've got someone here in the green room. It is none other than... I've got Ken LG. And I got to take a short break, and we'll go to Ken LG.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. No services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Okay, so we got about 8 minutes to go. I've got Ken LG waiting for his time to jump in. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I was just sitting here watching the public hearing this afternoon, and I was listening to Amanda Shelton. I guess apparently she's changing the rules and minimizing the amount of time senators can ask questions of the witnesses regarding the port settlement. And I think that everybody should go and watch that later today and listen to how public officials are meeting in secret, spending millions of dollars of taxpayer money without any oversight. And this is consistent with consistent with everything that's been happening in this administration, starting with the pay raises that have been handed out willy-nilly and allowing selected favored individuals to quit at midnight, get hired back at 8 a.m. the next day so that they can take out their accrued leave and things like that. It goes back to integrity, and that's what we're not seeing a lot of, especially in this administration. And to hear Amanda Shelton basically tell another elected representative that he has to keep his question short, on something involving millions of dollars of taxpayer money that apparently were dispensed illegally in violation of contracts, in violation of laws.
Ken, you said the port?
Yeah.
Explain a little bit about what they were talking about.
Well, basically, when I tuned in, Amanda Shelton basically had told Tom Fisher he only has a couple of minutes to frame his questions, and he protested it for the record, and she acknowledged it. And then he started in with these settlements, and they're labeled confidential settlements, which are, as he points out in there, you can't have a confidential settlement in Guam law. There is no such thing as a confidential settlement.
And he was talking about the Port 7. Is that what he was talking about?
Yeah, the Port 7. I think we're up to like $7 or $8 million, last figure I heard, between the settlements and the attorney's fees and expenses. And all the settlements are stamped confidential. And whoever it was over the port requested Tom Fisher not to disclose this information. So this is something that we as citizens, as taxpayers, need to get involved in. Because one of the things that I wanted to chime in on is something that you and I have talked about before, like the Ethics Commission. Without ever hearing a single case, the Ethics Commission decided that the officers and the board needed to go to Montreal for Christmas for an Ethics Commission, an ethics workshop, I guess. I'm trying to visualize what kind of ethics workshop takes place between Christmas and New Year's in Montreal, and why a board and an executive staff that have never heard a single case needed to go to Montreal to learn about whatever they were going to be covering in their workshops. It's just abuse, and that's why we need to have better oversight on these boards and commissions. And I appreciate how you call them out on their poor notices, because when I was doing FOIAs on government and Guam Memorial Hospital expenses, and discovered that we sent a doctor to a conference in London for about $75,000, $80,000, and then I checked into the conference and discovered that there was an online conference that would have been $3,600. See, these are the kinds of things where government administrators and executives look at our money as their money, It's like whenever we get new directors, the first thing they do is go out and get a new SUV and remodel their offices. And as we saw, the administration, even though they inherited well-appointed offices from the Calvo administration, I forget, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars in new furniture. And now with their new administration, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars more in new furniture. That's money that didn't go to benefit any person on Guam other than the people selling the furniture.
True enough.
Yeah, and so now here we are. A senator elected by the people wants to get into the details on how these settlements came about and how the funding and justification, I think that's something you requested in the FOIA, if I'm not mistaken, on how the expenses were put together. And they're being told by Amanda Shelton that, no, we're changing the rules for this hearing. And the fact that all these documents are stamped confidential. You know, it just, you know what they say, you know, something smells, you know, in this whole setup and situation. But, you know, the port is ripe with that. Go back to Guam YTK. You know, we were on the verge of having to give $20 million. And in fact, the port management got upset when I convinced Frank Uggan to take language out of the bond bill.
Ken, excuse me, I got a break for the halftime show. You want to hang on? You got more to say?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll hang on.
Okay, thank you.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Suspected Texas mass killer caught. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The man wanted for gunning down 5 neighbors in Cleveland, Texas last Friday night, captured last night only a few miles from the shooting scene.
It's a big sigh of relief for everyone, including law enforcement. I mean, they've been out here in the heat in full tactical gear, working night and day to get this suspect off the streets so that they can now begin to recover from the tragedy.
Gabby Hart of Fox 26 in Houston, Francisco Oropesa was found hiding in a closet under a pile of laundry by Border Patrol agents after a citizen's tip. A citizen of Mexico, Oropesa, has reportedly been deported and returned to the U.S. several times. In Lake Wales, Florida, police are looking for a 38-year-old man who shared an apartment with a woman and her 3 children who were found shot to death there last night. The Pentagon ordering 1,500 active-duty U.S. service personnel to the southern border.
In light of the changes on May 11th and the anticipated surge, DHS did reach out and request this support.
Pentagon spokesman General Patrick Ryder, but California Republican Congressman Darrell Issa charges the troops will be misused.
They're going to be used to help facilitate truckloads of people being bussed into the country. They're not going to be used to secure our border. That's very clear. This administration has basically turned our Border Patrol into an Uber service.
Customs and Border Protection bracing for what they fear will be a massive surge on the border after Title 42 expulsion rules expire a week from Thursday. Headed to the desk of Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, a state immigration reform bill that requires more businesses to use the E-Verify system to check the potential employees before hiring them, mandates hospitals to ask about citizenship of patients, and also allocates $12 million for migrant relocation. Governor DeSantis is expected to sign it. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Join us on May 12th as we host our annual PBS Guam Pledge Drive. Tune in and show your support for quality, educational, and entertaining programming. Your contributions help us continue to bring you thought-provoking documentaries, captivating cultural programs, and engaging children's shows. So tune in to PBS Guam Friday, May 12th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. and pledge your support to help us keep Guam enriched, inspired, and entertained. Viva!
President Biden will meet with House Speaker McCarthy next week to talk about the debt ceiling, but won't budge on spending cuts.
President Biden does not intend to negotiate the terms of raising the debt limit when he meets with top congressional leaders here next week.
Been very clear, that is not going to change. Now, I have said, as I said from the top here, that he's willing to have a separate conversation about their spending.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says Congress alone has a constitutional duty to prevent a default, which the Treasury Department says could be triggered as soon as June 1st. House Republicans have approved a debt limit extension tied to spending cuts, rejected by Democrats. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The Federal Reserve Board expected to announce a 0.25% hike in interest rates later today, pushing the rate it charges member banks to a 16-year high. Rerun season starting early this year. TV and movie writers have gone on strike.
It's being called the strike that streaming brought. Screen actors, including Rob Lowe, joining picket lines supporting Writers Guild of America members on strike after failing to reach a deal with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. The Alliance says it's offered generous increases in compensation and streaming residual improvements, but the Guild says it's not enough.
We want them to be successful, but we want to share in that success because we create the shows. We're creating those properties, and so we deserve fair pay.
One writer speaking to Fox 5 in New York, the 2007 strike lasting 100 days, leading to the rise of reality television and Hollywood losing more than $2 billion. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Montana judges ruled that Zoe Zephyr cannot return to the State House and take part in debate. The transgender lawmaker was silenced after telling colleagues who voted to ban gender-affirming care for minors in the state they'd have blood on their hands. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Express yourself into the groove. The Guam Chamber of Commerce celebrates its 99th anniversary at the Dusatani Resort on May 6th with the theme of Madonna's Vogue. The Chamber's membership includes many corporations, large and small, entrepreneurs, and nonprofit organizations. Members play a key part in making Guam a star-bright place to live, work, and play. Let's congratulate the Guam Chamber of Commerce and its members on celebrating its 99th anniversary.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagatnya location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Well, Jose, you've done it so many times, you don't even really need me to cue it up. But I'm going to ask you to do it one more time, and then I want you to do another Tim Rohr Jungle Watch when you finish that.
All right. Stand tall in your I'm a Tailgater t-shirt and on the Tall Tales Rogues Gallery by pointing your browser to thepoint.gu. That's the official website of this radio station. There you will see a t-shirt with a beard that says I'm a Tailgater. Click on that picture. It'll take you to the link where you can order your shirt. And when it arrives, put it on, take a selfie, and send that selfie to the Point's WhatsApp at 671-797-8255. You, too, could be a part of the Tall Tales I'm a Tailgater Rogues Gallery.
Very good, Jose.
You got Ken LG on the phone.
Oh, okay. I forgot about Ken. Yeah, Ken, I almost forgot about you. Go ahead.
Well, it's like I'm saying that that's why I cheer every time I hear you bust one of the boards in proper notice, because all these things are being done by boards. Most of the boards and commissions are all they're all political. They're all political appointees, and they all have agendas that line up with the administration. That's why they do things that in secret, as we are starting to see come out, not just with the Visitors Bureau, but it happens at the airport board and at the port board. And these are things that we as citizens need to know about. And in the final irony, I think it's interesting that the governor is now calling on the citizens of Guam to testify in the public hearing over the, it's interesting that she supports a public hearing on the fence.
You're breaking up, Ken.
How's this now?
That's better.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I just think it's ironic. She never once held a public hearing or a public meeting to get input from the public, from the stakeholders, and the medical community on a hospital there. But as soon as she loses the hospital, she's going on the front page and in the media urging everybody to testify on the missile system. It just shows how these politicians put their own interest ahead of the people of Guam. And we as citizens need to do a better job holding them accountable, because if we don't hold them accountable, who will?
If not us, then who?
Yeah. If not now, when?
Well, you're absolutely right, Ken, and thank you very much for chiming in on that point. I couldn't agree more heartily.
Well,
thank you, sir.
I encourage every one of the tailgaters to go back after the show and watch this public hearing. It's very interesting so far.
I'm going to do it when I get home, Ken. Thank you.
All right, bye.
And the other governor, Leon Guerrero, very good. Okay, let's go back to Tim Rohr and Tom Fisher, Jose.
Okay, and this one is another entry in junglewatch.info. This came out on May 1st, soon after the appearance of Senator Fisher on Ray Gibson's show. It's titled Senator Tom Fisher on the Ray Gibson Show, May 1st, 2023. On this past Monday's Ray Gibson show, Ray invited Senator Tom Fisher into the studio to discuss Fisher's Bill 106-37, which calls for a referendum on new abortion legislation, also written by Fisher, quote, to allow health care providers to provide abortion services without limitations. Ray's interview with Fisher begins about an hour 49 minutes into the show, and a few things caught my attention, to which I shall respond. And then he quotes Fisher here. I understand the abortion question, but that is not the question here today. We are going to fulfill our responsibility under Dobbs. And Tim responds by saying, what responsibility is that? Abortion is already fully legal in Guam, save for a very few limitations. No partial birth abortion, parental consent for minors, informed consent for women seeking to abort, and a reporting requirement. Fisher's bill seeks to remove these limitations, all of which were constitutionally compliant under Roe and Casey and had nothing to do with Dobbs. Since Fisher laments Dobbs and celebrates Roe and Casey, then that's what we already have on Guam, the freedom to abort pursuant to Roe and Casey. There is no further responsibility under Dobbs, unless, of course, Fisher and Barnes, the sponsor, wants to drive a final death stake through a still beating heart. By the way, if Fisher doesn't like the current limitations on abortion, then his issue is with Casey, not Dobbs. It was Casey which opened the door to common sense limitations on abortion, like parental and informed consent and abortion reporting. He puts a link here.
Yeah, Tim really nails it. But so many people have heard of Roe versus Wade, and they know, well, yeah, you know, it's a constitutional right to abortion, and that's about as far as they want to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just tend to see Fisher in the worst possible light here, given the way he's handled this whole issue, and it's kind of like he's relying on this lack of information in the public.
Especially since he's the attorney and ought to know better.
Yeah, and he comes along and says all of these things that a layman, Tim's not a lawyer, he comes along and blows a whistle. Go ahead, Jose.
About parental consent for minors. This, and he's citing from the Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey from 1992. Parental consent for minors. This conclusion is in no way inconsistent with our decisions upholding parental notification or consent requirements. Those enactments and our judgment that they are constitutional are based on the quite reasonable assumption that minors will benefit from consultation with their parents and that children will often not realize that their parents have their best interests at heart.
That's the law right now.
Mm-hmm. And then about informed consent for the women seeking to abort. We are left with the argument that the various aspects of the informed consent requirements are unconstitutional because they place barriers in the way of abortion on demand. Even the broadest reading of Roe, however, has not suggested that there is a constitutional right to abortion on demand. Rather, the right protected by Roe is a right to decide to terminate a pregnancy free of undue interference by the state. Because the informed consent requirement facilitates the wise exercise of that right, it cannot be classified as an interference with the right Roe protects. The informed consent requirement is not an undue burden on that right. Of course, there no longer is a Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
And then on abortion reporting. The collection of information with respect to actual patients is a vital element of medical research, and so it cannot be said that the requirements serve no purpose other than to make abortions more difficult. Nor do we find that the requirements impose a substantial obstacle to a woman's choice. At most, they might increase the cost of some abortions by a slight amount, while at some point increased costs could become a substantial obstacle. There is no such showing on the record before us.
Yeah, and these are all from a case called Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So you start out with Roe versus Wade, and Roe versus Wade broke it down into three trimesters. First trimester, you can't do it except to save the life of the mother. And then the second trimester, the state had an interest in the mother's health, and the final trimester, you could only abort under very stringent circumstances. Planned Parenthood came along and said Roe versus Wade is okay so long as the state doesn't add undue burdens. And of course, there was a lot of judicial wrangling over what was undue and what was not undue. And that's what Tim is taking issue with. It's not Dobbs, it's his problem. It's what he says he's upholding.
And what's interesting is this case law, which sets up the ability to do abortion reporting. A lot of people here on Guam, and I might even think that, including Senator Fisher, think that it's unconstitutional. And all that you have to know is that Planned Parenthood versus Casey demolishes that unconstitutional argument right off the bat.
Yeah, even before Dobbs came along.
Be informed, people. Know about Casey. Forget about Roe versus Wade because it no longer exists.
Go ahead, Jose.
Next, he quotes Fisher again. This submission is not an unlimited right to abortion. It's up to fetal viability, of course. It's up to fetal viability because the state then has an obvious interest in that. To which Tim responds, Fisher, in an apparent effort to sound reasonable and credible, is using the language of Roe, which emphasized the state's interest in protecting what Roe called potential life after the first trimester. For the stage subsequent to approximately the end of the first trimester, the state, in promoting its interest in the health of the mother, may, if it chooses, regulate the abortion procedure in ways that are reasonably related to maternal health.
And this is from Roe versus Wade.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then C, for the stage subsequent to viability, the state, in promoting its interest in the potentiality of human life, may, if it chooses, regulate and even proscribe abortion, except where it is necessary, in appropriate medical judgment, for the preservation of the life or health of the mother. And he goes on to cite some more from Roe versus Wade in opining. However, Fisher misleads. Fisher makes no mention of the state's obvious interest in that in his bill. In fact, Fisher leaves the decision to abort the child after viability completely up to the health care provider who is being paid to deliver a dead child, not a live one. And then he cites the permitted services under Roe versus Wade. General rule, a health care provider has a statutory right under this act to provide abortion services and may provide abortion services, and that provider's patient has a corresponding right to receive such services without any of the following limitations or requirements. A prohibition on abortion after fetal viability when, in the good faith medical judgment of the treating health care provider, continuation of the pregnancy would pose a risk to the pregnant patient's life or health. And then on Guam's Unborn Victims of Violence Act. At about the 1 hour and 53-minute mark, Ray asks, how would it be handled in a criminal case if somebody attacked a pregnant woman, at which point, in a situation like that, would it be considered an attack on the woman and the baby? Fisher, unclear. Most jurisdictions that have faced the issue have actually addressed it. If a mother, for example, is quickening and she is killed and the fetus dies, then some states have actual state statutes that provide for an additional charge of murder, manslaughter, whatever that is. Ray, we do here. Fisher, we do? Well, okay, well, that answers your question then, right? Ray, I don't know when the viability kicks in on that. It might just be a blanket, she's pregnant, and you took 2 lives, and that's all there is to it. Ray may be excused for not knowing the particulars of Guam's Unborn Victims of Violence Act, but at least he knew the act exists. Apparently, Senator Fisher did not. For the education of all of us, said act does not address the moving target of viability. The act simply criminalizes any attack on the mother which harms or kills the unborn child. And that's a quotation, which means that it's in the law. Who, according to the act, is legally not a fetus, as Fisher insists on calling the unborn child. And then from 9 GCA Section 17, definitions. For the purposes of this chapter, the following terms are defined to mean: unborn child shall mean a child in utero, and the term child in utero or child who is in utero means a member of the species Homo sapiens at any stage of development who is carried in the womb.
Any stage of development.
Any stage, right.
Yeah.
That's important to note. And that goes into the whole personhood
It does.
discussion.
It does indeed. Yeah.
You want to finish with the personal note?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
You're doing good, Jose.
And then he ends with a personal note here, Tim Rohr. I don't know Senator Fisher. I've never met him or interacted with him directly in any way. As a candidate, he presented himself as reasonable, knowledgeable, and credible. So I voted for him. Senator Fisher has every right to introduce whatever legislation he wants and to take any position he wants. I am tempted to advise him, though, not to mislead or lie. However, following such advice could be political suicide. Misleading and lying has worked so well for so many of his colleagues for so very long. In fact, when they get caught and get voted out, they get voted in again the next time around. So carry on, Mr. Fisher. Meanwhile, this referendum, if it becomes a referendum, will not be a referendum on abortion. It will be a referendum on the hearts and minds of the voters of Guam.
It's very interesting. You can't put one over on Tim when it comes to Roe, Casey, abortion, etc. And, of course, that's exactly what Fisher is trying to do. He's saying he wants to codify Roe and Casey, but he wants to go much, much farther than Roe and Casey ever went. Okay.
It's like a digital executioner, except for or Pontius Pilate. He's giving us the dirty work to do.
Exactly. So I've got an article here that ran in the Post. It's entitled, quote, "Be prepared, Bill 106 would let voters decide on abortion. Guam voters may have the responsibility of deciding how abortion should be treated on island if lawmakers pass Bill 106, dubbed the You Decide measure." And I had a little fun with that the other day. It's kind of like, you decide, but Barnes and I already have. They really want abortion. They say they want people to choose, but they only want them to choose in favor of abortion. Senator Thomas Fisher, the bill's main sponsor, spoke to media about Bill 106 at a conference Monday. He said it wasn't easy concluding that the public should be the ones to decide the abortion issue, but added that if felt necessary, as the legislature has not proven itself to be particularly adept at resolving the question of reproductive health or abortion rights. So right there, that's enough. Let's just stop right there for a minute. Tom Fisher, reproductive health. And the language that you use, the connotations of the language that you use, tell me an awful lot about what I need to know about you and about your position. And when you start talking about reproductive health, when what you're really talking about, as Tim so aptly describes it, is tearing apart a helpless, innocent human inside of its mother. That is not any kind of health whatsoever. It's death. Going on, abortion is already legal on Guam, but there are various restrictions imposed by law. Moreover, legal battles in the federal and local courts may change the legality of the practice. These cases evolve around Guam's 30-year-old abortion ban and whether the law can be enforced after spending decades under an injunction. Should Bill 106 pass, the actual proposal that voters will decide on in the next general election is the Health Protection Act of 2023. And once again, he's calling it health protection. Whose health?
And you're using the word protection?
Yeah. The health. It's kind of like my definition the other day of democracy and how willing Democrats are use the word upon which the name of their party is based. And anything they don't like, oh, that's an attack on democracy. When we don't live in a democracy, the framers did not want a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic where we elect our representatives and our representatives represent us. And I pointed out, if you're really looking for democracy, a mob is democracy. And if you're looking for the best or the most effective democracy of all, look for a lynch mob. Because the vote is however many people that are there, and there's only one person in the minority. Talk about majority rules.
You know what? Maybe you can say Dred Scott was just a property protection act.
Well, it was.
You're right. But they don't talk about the person, right? They just talk about the property.
Yeah, it was. You can't deprive a person of his life, liberty, or property just because he changes his zip code. A good point, Jose. Fisher, the article goes on to say abortion is legal on Guam, but there are various restrictions imposed by law. Moreover, legal battles in the federal and local courts may change the legality of the practice. These cases revolve around Guam's 30-year-old abortion ban and whether the law can be enforced after spending decades under injunction. Should Bill 106 pass, the actual proposal that voters will decide on in the next general election is the Health Protection Act of 2023. Unlike the Health Protection Act, as your Heartbeat Act, introduced last year, which sought to further restrict abortion access, the Health Protection Act would ensure the right to provide and receive abortion services on Guam without burdensome limitations. For example, local law normally restricts abortions to 13 weeks after pregnancy, whereas the Health Protection Act allows health care provider to determine viability, the point in which the fetus can survive outside the womb with or without support, and prohibits limitations or restrictions to abortions prior to fetal viability. There can be no restrictions. It would also prohibit restrictions on abortion after viability. If a medical provider deems that continuing the pregnancy would be life-threatening. Other prohibited restrictions on limitations include mandates for medically unnecessary in-person visits, and restrictions on the ability of a healthcare provider to prescribe or dispense medication. All of the chemical abortion that you want, all of the stuff that we declared, that the people of Guam have already declared illegal, or their ability to provide abortion services through telemedicine, the core issue behind an ongoing federal challenge to Guam's in-person consultation mandate. If approved by voters, the Health Protection Act would supersede existing abortion laws on Guam, according to Fisher.
Well, at least he admits to it.
Mm-hmm. Supersede existing, all of the eight, I thought, common sense regulations imposed by the Esperanza Project, and primarily Tim, during a time that abortion was legalized by Roe and Planned Parenthood. I've got somebody in the in the green room here. I've got a lot more here, but it's a repeat. It was ordinarily right on point, and I'll come back to this after I talk with Repeat. But first, we're going to go to Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch.
Express yourself into the groove. The Guam Chamber of Commerce celebrates its 99th anniversary at the Dusatani Resort on May 6th with the theme of Madonna's Vogue. The Chamber's membership includes many corporations, large and small, entrepreneurs, and nonprofit organizations. Members play a key part in making Guam a star-bright place to live, work, and play. Let's congratulate the Guam Chamber of Commerce and its members on celebrating its 99th anniversary.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
So here we are, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago, world's most beautiful ballpark. And it isn't double talk when I refer to this guy as Repeat. So tell us like it is, Repeat.
Yeah, I don't think I have to repeat, or you don't have to guess where I fall on this issue. But, you know, a couple of points that I think 3 points that I wanted to make real quick is that those pro-abortionists, right, they claim that they have, it's their body, their right, whatever, but they also have the right to engage in preventive measures to not get pregnant, right? That's point number one. The other one is, if we can put a nationwide ban on cockfighting because it's cruel and unusual, but we can still condone killing of innocent babies, what does that say about our society? And then the third point that I wanted to make, which is more of a local point and close to home, is that statistically, the vast majority of abortions that have occurred on Guam over the past, 4 decades have been Chamorro babies. So for all those reasons, and just because killing innocent children is wrong, it's a moral imperative not to do so, I am pro-life. I know Tim was splitting hairs about what the definition of pro-life is. I guess I could say I'm anti-abortion.
That's great, Pete. I'm very happy to hear you say that.
Right. So, you know, I don't know why there's such a debate. This is not something that is too difficult to wrap our heads around. If you want to talk about personal rights, you also have responsibilities. With rights comes responsibilities. And so be responsible and don't create an innocent life that you're going to murder.
Right on point, Pete. Thank you very much for calling.
It's his name, but I'd repeat that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, Pete doesn't mess around. Very good. Okay, so back to this story here. Fisher stated that the public would essentially decide on whether to codify a version of Roe versus Wade and Casey v. Planned Parenthood, the landmark cases that once protected the right to an abortion in the U.S. Well, he goes way beyond that. And then he really reveals the real Tom Fisher here. And I got to tell you something that happened during the election, and that is that Tom Fisher had a Black Lives Matter sign posted on his law office in Agana. And
wow,
that to me is something of a tip-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A Black Lives Matter sign.
A Black Lives Matter.
Which also poses as a red flag.
Yeah, it did for me. It posed as a red flag. So when he campaigned, it's like Tim sounded. He sounded reasonable, matter of fact. He's got very good delivery. He's very believable. And, of course, I have a certain affinity for lawyers anyhow, not that they all have to be politically on the same side that I'm on, but lawyers have an ability to reason and analyze that most people don't have. And I usually have high expectations of even hard left lawyers because they can do that. They don't go off on really irrational errands. So I was relatively favorably decided to Fisher until he came out with this bill. And now what I'm going to read really kind of fills in all the gaps on Tom Fisher. And here it goes. The U.S. Supreme Court overturned those decisions last year. That's Roe and Casey. The U.S. Supreme Court overturned those decisions last year in Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, which Fuller described Wednesday as one of the worst decisions of the nation's high court. Now, you know, that almost gets you the what was that guy's name? Raymond Ray Topaznia Drive, for being able to lie with a straight face. You could disagree with Dobbs, and you could say, it's not what I like, and I'm on the other side. But to say it's one of the worst decisions out of the nation's high court just means that all you're talking about is your own personal preference. Because I'm going to break my own rule here and say this. Everybody knows that Roe versus Wade was one of the worst decisions ever decided. Even the people who like it. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't like it. Even the pro-aborts didn't like it because they said it was a horrible decision.
It was weak.
Very weak. And it was sociology as opposed to law. There was really no constitutional foundation for it except the lunacy of the Griswold case. So if you say it's one of the worst decisions, that's just raising a red flag that tells you that if it doesn't make my tummy warm, but if it tightens up my anal sphincter, it's a bad decision. And that's what Tom Fisher is saying here.
You know what? On a foundational level, for a Republican Party or a candidate running on the Republican as a Republican, the foundation of the party, what I would think a conservative, would celebrate the defeat of Roe versus Wade overturning because it brings governing powers back to the state.
Yeah.
It dissolves this central mentality of everything is ruled out from the federal government. So why would anybody say it's the worst decision?
Yeah, and I've mentioned this on the show more than once. Had I not even gotten into the abortion aspects, I'm a federalist. I'm not a nationalist. I want to see, states exercise the powers that they had from the get-go. And it's the national government that's pulling powers away from the states. And we run into the rare situation where an organization willingly gives up power and gives it to the states. And if you're pro-abortion, fine. Persuade your state government to go with abortion. That's the way the system's supposed to work. But not if you're on the hard left. And that's exactly where Tom Fisher is. I wonder how he spells Republican, if he spells Republican with a D. Then he goes on to say, you can't find the word abortion in the Constitution, that's for sure. And that's one of the things that Alito wrote in the Dobbs decision. It's not in the Constitution. So they said the right to abortion is not in the Constitution, nor is it deeply rooted in American constitutional history. And that's the formula for what is now referred to as originalism. And originalism as it's applied to substantive due process. And I've talked about substantive due process before, and I'll give you the really down-to-earth vision of substantive due process. You can't tie it to any of the enumerated rights in the Constitution or in the Bill of Rights. And I've also mentioned that the real challenge with the Supreme Court, with courts in general, with anyone who exercises state violence, meaning state authority, is this: to set up a system so that a person or so that people don't use their state authority just to foster their own personal beliefs. That's what we're against. So if you're the Supreme Court, you can't get 9 folks to say, well, we got together and we talked about it, and we really like abortion, so there can't be any restriction. You can't do that. You have to have some well-founded argument with depth that this isn't just your personal persuasion, that you go back to some other source of authority for the rulings that you make. Okay, let's go to let's head for Churchill Downs, and I'm going to come back here to talk once again about the leftist.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, 6 furlongs. I cross the finish line and wrap up another episode of Tall Tales. Right now, I'm talking about Tom Fisher, who introduced the People's, what is the name of his act? The Health Protection Act. Yeah, the euphemistically, it's not even a euphemistically, the misleadingly titled bill, Health Protection Act. And Tom says you can't find the word abortion in the Constitution, that's for sure. So they, meaning the Supreme Court, 5 members of the Supreme Court, said the right to abortions is not in the Constitution, nor is it deeply rooted in American constitutional history, which is what we're looking for when we're talking substantive due process. And I've explained before, substantive due process means I characterize it as judicial hocus pocus. It is laying out what your own personal preference should be as far as the law, and then using legal terms not to reach the decision that you're adopting, but to describe the decision that you're adopting. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. He's starting out with the Lochner era back at the turn of the last century, where substantive due process, which resides in the liberty interest. The 14th Amendment says the government shall not deprive anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So in the turn of the last century, the Supreme Court said when New York State said that a law restricting female bakery workers to only 60 hours a week was unconstitutional because it violated the liberty interests known as freedom of contract, Supreme Court struck it down. And now the liberals, in fact, even conservatives, they want to talk about how a Supreme Court can get out of control. They say things like, you got to look all the way back to the Lochner era before you see something like this. So the conservatives did it. And then the liberals did it to a fare thee well. As an example, we've got Griswold versus Connecticut. Griswold versus Connecticut is the case where Mr. Justice William Douglas found a case or controversy arising out of Griswold versus Connecticut, where he said there isn't anything in the Bill of Rights that expressly prohibits married people from using artificial contraception, but the penumbras of the Bill of Rights does. The shadows of the Bill of Rights does.
That's right up there with the living Constitution.
It is part of the living Constitution. It took us a long time before our vision was clear enough so that we could see those penumbras emanations. And Griswold is the foundation for Roe versus Wade, for Ogerfeld versus what's his name for Henry marrying Herman, the amount of harm that case did, because William Douglas, if you read up a little bit about William Douglas, William Douglas was, the classic example of the 70-some-year-old with a 30-some-year-old wife. He was an interesting dude, to say the least. Very, very liberal. And he saw the Warren Court and this opportunity as his opportunity to enact his own personal preferences into the constitutional law of the United States, and it really got out of control. And that's where we are right now. So Tom Fisher goes on to say, I think the case was flawed from the beginning. The question is not whether abortion exists in the Constitution. The question is whether a right to privacy, a person's right to integrity of their own body, exists in the Constitution. It most certainly does. So I think there are canons of construction when you're interpreting constitutional law. One canon is that the Supreme Court should decide any case on the narrowest possible basis. And that's why, had I been on the Supreme Court, I'd have probably gone along with Roberts. Roberts said, just find the Mississippi statute unconstitutional and stop there. That would have been the way Supreme Court ordinarily decides cases. Of course, I really like the result, but so Tom Fisher's canon appears to be this. Tom Fisher's canon of constitutional construction is, it's not what the Constitution says, it's what you want the Constitution to say. Yeah, it's what you want it to say. He says, the question whether a right to privacy, a person's right to the integrity of their own body, exists in the Constitution. It most certainly does. Fisher, who practiced law before becoming a senator, said, well, he practiced law, he must know, right?
Maybe law, but not logical fallacies.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sir.
They keep using this argument. Okay, I'll give them privacy in the Constitution just for this argument of sense. If that's the case, then why are they not recognizing the body of the unborn and their right to privacy as well?
Uh-huh.
It's amazing how there is a tunnel vision to that argument.
Well, and that's where you get into this enacting personal preferences, because the Supreme Court has not come to grips with whether or not an unborn human is a person.
And they also grappled with slaves being a person.
Exactly.
So I'm going to give them some time.
Yeah. It took Roger B. Taney said that a slave was not a person, that any white man, the rights of which or whom any white man had to respect. Yeah. So it's again this idea of we'll take our own personal wants and desires and we'll use really high-flown language and complicated language, and we'll make the best arguments that we can to come sometimes to a conclusion that's absolutely ridiculous on its face. That baby who is born, say, at 1800 on a Wednesday becomes a person at 1800 on a Wednesday, but at 1759 was not a person. It's almost like the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, isn't it? He was a caterpillar when he crawled in there, but a butterfly when he came out. And, you don't need to go very far down the road of studying morality or these things. It's just your own any person's realistic analysis of what personhood consists of that leads you to the result that human, that unborn human, is a person and ought to have some kind of right of privacy too, instead of having somebody poking it with a scalpel before it has a chance to be born. So, Tom Fisher, the question is whether a right to privacy, a person's right to the integrity of their own body, exists in the Constitution. It most certainly does. Fisher announced Bill 106 last week, and there's already some opposition to holding a public vote on the abortion measure from advocates on the opposite ends of the issue. Even Vanessa Williams and Jane Flores don't like it. And of course, what they say is completely logical. If indeed it is a personal right of a woman to protect her own personal autonomy, then why are we putting it to a vote? You know, you can't be in favor of the vote if that's your position. And the same way, if you're on the other side, if you're anti-abortion, the last thing you want, you know, you believe this is legal, correct, moral, all of the arguments you can put in place for it, why would you want to put it to a vote? It's just not something that you vote on. It's either right or wrong.
Should we revisit all the other moral laws on the books that were not put to the public as a referendum? Because that's the same thing here.
It does. It is. Yeah. Fisher said Monday that the reason he wants to forward the bill is because he's concerned about rollbacks on. Now, this really pulls the curtain back on Attorney Tom Fisher. He is concerned about the rollbacks on constitutional rights that had been recognized for decades due to the Dobbs decision and the implications following it. Now, here we go. It's the best we can do to protect ourselves.
Who is ourselves?
Not anybody who hasn't been born yet, that's for sure.
Oh, so it does include those without a uterus.
Apparently so. And he goes into this personal preference as being the rule of law. Fisher says a storm may be coming. That's not hyperbole. Just read the dissent of Justice Breyer, Kagan, and Sotomayor in the Dobbs decision. Now, since when do we look for dissents in Supreme Court opinions for a lack of hyperbole? Yeah, let's, I'll bet you Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia is getting a good chuckle out of that one wherever he might be right now. The master of hyperbole writ large. I only got just a couple of minutes to go, and I notice somebody wants to get on the air here. I'm going to have to finish this up, I think.
You got Johnny Utah on the line.
Okay. Go ahead, Johnny.
Hey, Judge Bob. Half a day. How are you doing?
Probably better than I deserve, Johnny Utah, but I ain't going to change.
I was just listening to you speak about the attorney, Tom Fisher, and just in general, everyone who is pro-murdering children. Well, I wonder what's going to happen to all of the abortionists and the people that are advocating for the murdering of these children when they pass away. Because a lot of them claim to believe in a higher spirit and a higher place, and even if they go to heaven, they're going to run into these souls that they've advocated murdering.
Interesting, Johnny. Yeah. Of course,
they're gonna...
Jose and I think that when you die, you go to purgatory. And boy, if you're one of the pro-aborts, you're going to be there a long, long time. Go ahead, Johnny.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, absolutely. They're not even thinking about any of this stuff. They're just thinking about their wallets. That's what I think this Tom Fisher guy's thinking about. I think he's thinking about money. He's not thinking about morality.
Well, it may very well be.
My 2 cents in.
Well, you were successful, Johnny Utah. How's the weather in Utah today?
Absolutely gorgeous. The cherry blossoms are blooming. The we have a bunch of these Japanese trees. I forget what they're called. They're like a pear tree. The white flowers are just everywhere. It smells so good. It's 80 degrees, about 45, 50 in the morning, and it's absolutely beautiful.
I got one more here, Johnny, so thanks for calling. Let me see if I can squeeze one more in here. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. Happy day. This is Flora. I'll make it quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Flora.
You know, I'm going to tell you something. I am definitely anti-abortion, man. And I'm just blitzed that Tricia would go this far to, put up some kind of bill on this referendum. I am really blitzed at this situation. But, I love the show as always. I didn't realize that it was almost time. My eyes are blind.
Okay, Flora, I'm glad you're with us on that one. I got to say goodbye to our president,
yeah,
okay?
Same to you, sir. Enjoy your evening.
Okay, let's go, Brandon.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Callahan, Fox News. Francisco Oropeza, the illegal immigrant wanted for killing 5 neighbors last Friday night, has been captured outside Cleveland, Texas.
He was caught hiding in a closet underneath some laundry. They effectively made the arrest. He is uninjured.
San Jacinto County Sheriff Greg Capers, Fox's Griff Jenkins reports, following a tip to the FBI, an elite tactical team from U.S. Border Patrol made the arrest.
Even though border policies in place did not stop him from coming back into this country at least 4 or 5 times, it was Border Patrol elite agents that were able to bring this to a close without anyone else having to get injured or killed.
Oropeza will be charged with the shooting deaths of 5 people, including a 9-year-old boy. Central Florida, a woman and her 3 children have been found shot to death. Police are looking for the man who lived with them. Pentagon confirms 1,500 U.S. troops have been ordered to the southern border.
Ahead of pandemic-related restrictions expiring next week and a surge of migrants expected to seek asylum protections.
This is a common practice, if you will. These personnel will be performing administrative tasks like data entry and warehouse support. They will not be performing law enforcement functions or interacting with immigrants or migrants.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says it will free up Customs and Border Protection to focus on enforcement. Previous presidents have also relied on active-duty military troops to supplement DHS, including former President Trump.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Federal expulsion rules known as Title 42 expire a week from Thursday. Federal Reserve Board Chairman Powell expected to announce another interest rate hike today. Analysts believe it'll be 0.25%, boosting the Fed's key lending rate to 5.1%. America is listening to Fox News.
New from the Fox News Podcast Network.
I'm Emily Campagno, and this is the Fox True Crime Podcast.
And I had nothing to do with her disappearance.
I sit down with the people who lived the nightmares.
I was in shock. I was just devastated.
The investigators who tirelessly worked on the case.
And I really hope that they can catch this guy.
Bringing you closer to the story than you ever thought possible.
Listen and follow now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
These are the stories that keep you up at night.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Listen to the all-new Bret Baier podcast featuring Common Ground, talking to lawmakers weekly from opposite sides of the political spectrum about the issues of the day and how Americans can find common ground in a politicized world.
That's just not happening on Capitol Hill. It takes leadership, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Along with all your Bret Baier favorites like the campaign, the candidates, the all-star panel, and much more. Available now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
One of the pioneers of artificial intelligence is sounding an alarm about the technology he helped to create.
Geoffrey Hinton was once a top developer of artificial intelligence at Google, but he quit his job over the technology. He now tells the New York Times he fears AI has gotten too smart too soon, that it could become smarter and more quicker than humans much sooner than he expected. And in the wrong hands, it could be bad in that AI's ability to create fake images and text could lead to people not knowing what is real or not. Google says in response, it's committed to a responsible AI development. Eben Brown, Fox News.
The White House is launching an investigation into how companies may be using AI to the detriment of employees. Samsung has reportedly banned employees from using the AI tools like ChatGPT. Bloomberg reporting the company discovered staff had uploaded sensitive code to the app. New government numbers say about half the people who voted in last year's midterm elections did not go to their polling place.
New data from the Census Bureau says nearly half of all voters in 2022 opted to cast their votes before midterm election day or cast their votes by mail. That's far more than the midterm elections of 2014 or 2018. Only one time did the U.S. see more people vote early or by mail. 2/3 of registered voters did that in the 2020 presidential election at the height of the COVID pandemic. As for the state with the best voter turnout this past election, that was Colorado at 95%. The lowest was West Virginia at about 61%. Jill Nato, Fox News.
Nordstrom says it plans to close both of its downtown San Francisco stores, citing what it calls the dynamics of the downtown market, which has been marked by massive retail thefts. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hey there, folks. It's me, KFC's Extra Crispy Colonel. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the original recipe, but in this sizzling summer heat, I'm feeling a little extra crispy. My KFC Extra Crispy Chicken is freshly double-breaded and fried to a luxurious, mouth-watering bronze. You see, Extra Crispy KFC Chicken isn't just a product, it's a lifestyle.
Pick up your KFC Extra Crispy meal today. KFC is extra finger licking good.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
And if you want a little bang in your yin yang, come along.
The smuggler's propaganda is false. Let me be clear. Our border is not open and will not be open after May 11th.
Congressman Omar, where are you, Congressman Omar? There you go. God love you. I'm not supposed to get in trouble for saying this, but you look beautiful tonight.
3 million jobs have gone to China. You're sitting here and telling me that we have too many jobs in this country? Are you serious?
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America. Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
All right, news roundup and information overload hour. We'll get to your calls coming up shortly. 800-941-SEAN, our number if you want to be a part of the program. Anyway, so Janet Yellen earlier mentioned that June 1st is the drop-dead date. That's less than a month from now. Today's May 2nd. That we have to solve or resolve the issue of the debt ceiling. In other words, that's the date America begins to default on its borrowed money. So they need to raise the debt ceiling. All right, to give you a little history, we talked about it some with Matt Gaetz. If you go back from the very beginning, your President Joe decided that he would not talk to Congress. He would not talk to Kevin McCarthy. He said there will be no debate, no discussion, no negotiation. And by the way, they echoed those same sentiments even today. And, you know, we're, 30 days out now of hitting that June 1st date. So anyway, maybe back 90 days ago or so, they finally did meet. They have a meeting for May 9th. It'll almost be day 100 since McCarthy was invited to the White House to talk about the debt ceiling with Joe Biden, although listening to Karine Jean-Pierre earlier today, they have no intention of negotiating at all. I guess the White House kind of forgot the fact that we have co-equal branches of government and that the power of the purse lies with Congress, not with the executive branch. But they're saying that they're not going to go along with it. Now, to Kevin McCarthy's credit, he was trying very, very hard the last, 90 whatever days or so to get a meeting with President Joe Biden. Biden said, no negotiation, my way or the highway. So they did a really smart thing. I think they passed what is a fiscally responsible bill that saves $4.8 trillion in 10 years. It caps the rate of growth for government and government programs. In other words, the baseline budgeting number to only 1% increase every single year. It also impacts some energy bills that Republicans have been trying to get passed, and that it has to do with the economy. It's the lifeblood of the world's economy, and some border issues are